Hi, this is Misha, and this is the second episode in our Versus series. As I explained in the first, we're going to take in each episode two, maybe three guns, depending on what exactly is up, and compare them from the same conflict, kind of compare and contrast. And I'm not promising I'm going to say one is clearly better than the other, but we're going to look at the features, so on and so forth. And, just kind of talk about them. And we're starting off with World War II because it's the most famous conflict. And after we do this and take a few suggestions from you fine folks, then we will probably move into World War I, Vietnam, who knows. So, for episode 2, kind of a couple of obscure ones. Well, not obscure, that's not the right word. But episode 1, they're kind of two famous guns. For this one, we're doing the British Lee-Enfield No.4 Mark I. This is a 1943 Brit, with some of the wartime simplifications, including the stamped rear sight. Still adjustable though. Firing 303 British, 7.7 by 56 rimmed. This is based on the James Paris Lee bolt system, and was really the last major variant iteration in the Enfield family, dating all the way back to really 1888 with the first Lee Metford. It's amazing how little the action itself changed. This was first adopted in 1939 and went into production in 1941. And was the standard issue so-called short rifle in Britain during World War II. And to put it up against a gun that British soldiers might have gone up against in the invasion of Italy, we have the Italian Carcano, and this is the model 1938 or M38 short rifle. This was the most modern variant in World War II. It was adopted in 1938, and this would actually see Italy going to the 7.35 by 51 cartridge, at least for a brief time, which was their attempt in World War II to increase their firepower, much like Japan did, going from 6.5 to 7.7, but Italy was not as successful. And much like with the Enfield, this was really the last major iteration in their Carcano bolt action series, with a bolt that really did not change since around 1890, 1891. Also the same magazine system as with the Enfield. I left the attached bayonet on this just because it's cool. I usually just leave this bayonet on this gun because it's just weird and different. This actually came with this gun. It's also very hard to deploy when you're on a table, guys. Here, just to show you. It has a flip-out bayonet. The hinge is very much like on the cavalry carbine, if you know. Like that with the button here. The second button is to take the whole blade off if you need to. But mostly these were just left on the guns. There's even this neat little cutout in the stock for it. So yeah, two guns that would have gone head-to-head in like the invasion of Sicily and other campaigns in Italy. So who had that better gun between these two? Well, the No.4 really was the last evolution, and very much perhaps the best. We have a barrel that's just about 26 inches. It is more or less free-floated, at least by the standards of the day and time. They did their best to accurize it, because some of the complaints dealing with the original SMLE Mark III had to do with accuracy. We have a very large protector on the front sight, very beefy. This one's machined. Some of these manufactured, especially in Canada, could be stamped. The bayonet lugs are on each side here. It takes a simple socket bayonet. It could either be a small blade or a pig sticker, a little spike. We have a full-length handguard. Earlier versions would have this ribbing. Some would do away with it just to save time, but the barrel is fully protected by the handguard. Sling swivel. You could have a stacking rod up here or not, depending on which exact service this might have been in. The receiver was streamlined for mass production. It's a little more squared off than earlier Enfield receivers. A little few machining steps changed or cut back. We already looked at the rear sight. It is a peep mounted at the rear bridge, which is a good deal, kind of like on the 03A3. This really started on this style of sight in the UK in the 1920s with the SMLE Mark V, and this is kind of the final culmination. Now originally this would be a machined sight, windage and elevation adjustable, but for World War II, Britain would go to a stamped sight that's just basically elevation adjustable. Later, after the war, they would often fit the machined sight back on because it's just held on with a large screw and pin. We have a semi-pistol grip type stock, very traditional Enfield, with the traditional trapdoor in the butt plate. Early ones would have a brass butt plate. Then in World War II, they would go to kind of a zinc type metal, dull pewter looking plate, and then after they would go back to brass. So there were wartime economies. The British version would have the spring-loaded bolt retainer here. The Canadian and American made versions would do away with this. That would be the Mark I Star. We have a lightning cut in the bolt here. Sometimes the bolt handle would have a small hole drilled as a lightning cut. This one is just flat. Also, this one has the full trigger guard. Sometimes the trigger guard would be slimmed down to save on weight. And of course, this still feeds from the very famous James Paris Lee 10-round detachable mag. Now this mag system, while basically unchanged, was updated, if I can do it right, sorry guys, was updated over time. The original Enfields, the mag, I've actually never taken the one out of this gun before. That's gonna fight me. The original mag system, there we go. Once it started going, it's very smooth. The original mag system was fitted to each gun. Then they started to make them more standard, and by the number 4, you could pretty much swap mags between any of the guns. They were made to a point they were standardized. But they really only issued one mag with each gun because the idea wasn't for reloading, it was for cleaning. Now originally, the first Enfields, they did not take stripper clips, so they would issue 2 mags with each gun. But once they introduced the stripper clip guide system in the early 20th century, they would only start issuing 1 mag and expected soldiers to do that. Now there's no bolt hole open, but we do have a turn down bolt. This was standard on the Enfield pretty much from the very beginning. We have this cocking piece exposed, kind of slab. This was basically a version of the Enfield designed to be more accurate, easier, faster to mass produce, and more durable. Specifically, the stock was made a little more durable. The SMLE Mark III stock was known for cracking, especially internally when you went to destock it. The 303 round itself, honestly, by World War II, was looking pretty dang obsolescent. It was relatively large enough, but wasn't the most powerful, the most accurate. But really its biggest downfall was having a rim, so you could achieve things like rim lock. Now, I forgot to mention the safety here. Typical Enfield safety. Nice safety, I'd say. Easy to use, smooth, so on and so forth. No bolt holdback of any type, and no magazine feed cutoff on this version. So, the Carcano. Now, when they went to the M38, the idea was to get away from the 6.5 by 52 cartridge, which, while actually having nice light recoil and being quite accurate, wasn't viewed as having a whole lot of penetration, but they did want to redesign the whole action, the whole magazine, the whole in-block clips. We'll get to in a minute, the Mannlicher system. So they thought, what's the largest we can go to while maintaining dimensions back here? And that is where 7.35 by 51 came from. They basically enlarged it as much as they could by keeping everything the same. They were going to replace 6.5 with this, and they manufacture these actually in quite large numbers, not just the short rifle, although this was the standard. They also did carbines in the caliber, but only for a couple of years, only to about 1940. Then the logistics, Italy, yada yada, you can check out our history video for that, got in the way. So they would go back to 6.5. So what did they do with the M38? Now it's worth saying they did make the M38 and 6.5 as well. Most collectors call them the M91 38. We have a relatively short barrel. Now the carbine versions would have a barrel under 18 inches. This has a barrel of a little under 22 inches. So it's a couple inches longer than a carbine, but is honestly one of the shortest short rifles, if you want to go there, around, at least for military service. We have an unprotected front sight. We have a very simple notch rear sight, unadjustable in any way. It's just battlefield zeroed and that's it. We have a short upper handguard with partially exposed barrel. The bayonet we already talked about. We have side mounted sling swivels, which is honestly a nice thing. This has a beefier stock than the standard Carcano carbine. The action, though, is virtually unchanged from the original. The original carbines always had a turn-down bolt, but the original long rifles would have a straight bolt. So they took the carbine-style bolt. This cannot be topped off by stripper clips. Instead, it used 6-round Mannlicher-style en-bloc clips. One important change that Italy did, the clips could be inserted from either direction. They weren't unidirectional like the original Austrian, so that was a nice upgrade. The bolt system itself is very simple. That's not to say unreliable. The safety is here, very easy to use. When it's on, you see it. It literally obstructs your view. You can also use it as a decocker of sorts. When the safety's on, you can pull the trigger and press your bolt, your cocking piece forward, and now it is decocked. So that's pretty neat. The trigger is fine on these. Again, I could say the same thing about the Enfield. And finally, again, like the Enfield, we have a storage compartment for a cleaning rod and jag in the stock. This was taken from the carbine. Again, not a whole lot to say because both of these guns, especially their actions, their magazines, were unchanged since the 19th century. That's why I decided to compare them. So, which one is better? Now the Italian guns dropped the famous game twist rifling after World War I. So this just has standard rifling. The short barrel is nice for saving on both weight and length, of course, but since we have fixed sights, we're pretty limited on our range, accuracy, and all of that. Also, the Carcano bolt, while it's been more maligned than really should have been, is not the smoothest in the world. Sorry, this one's really sticky because it still has Cosmine in it because I never shoot it. It is turned down, which is good. But think of maybe a slightly nicer Mosin bolt. Now the trigger I would say is nicer than Mosin. Actually the trigger on this one is very good. And the 6-round en-bloc system is nice. Just put a packet in, eject it. The old one will fall off the bottom, put in a new one. So that's good. So it was a short, handy little standard infantry gun, but it had very distinct limitations. Now on the other hand, it was fast and easy to mass produce, so that's good. Italy definitely needed an economy gun during that war. But let's compare it with the Enfield. The Enfield's bolt is legendary for its smoothness, quick operation. Now, the turn down handle helps a lot, but also the throw is shorter. It's not a 90-degree throw, it's only about a 45-degree. Now, you have to use stripper clips to top this off. I didn't mention on the Carcano, one advantage it does have, it is a rimless round, guys. We do use stripper clips, 5 rounds, to top this off, and we do have to deal with the rimmed round, which can lead to rim lock if you're not practiced. But once you get good at it, it's not such a big deal. And we do have a 10-round magazine, so higher capacity. We do have much better, even these simplified for wartime sights are much better. They're adjustable and have a longer radius, and the front is protected. Even on the rear, the stamped rear is pretty weak and can easily be bent. It is a peep. And this was pretty fast and easy to mass produce for England, so it's not far behind. I'm not exactly sure, and it's kind of hard to really talk about cost during the war, but these are both very cost-effective guns. Trigger is acceptable on this. Later with the Mark II, No.4 Mark II, they would try to improve the trigger by hanging it from the receiver instead of the trigger guard, and that would help a little bit. The 7.7 cartridge, while getting quite old, was still better than the 7.3. Now, to be fair, the Italian 7.3 cartridge in concept wasn't all that bad, but in practice, Italian arsenals, Italian cartridge factories made them very inconsistently, so the accuracy was never great with 7.3. So for this versus video, I'm going to have to give it to the good old Enfield. Even though the action isn't the strongest because the lugs are in the back, and really it was operating at the edge of its capabilities with smokeless powder. Because of the better sights, the larger mag capacity, and just the better quality of manufacturing overall, I'm going to say it's the superior gun. However, it is heavier and longer, so for weight and length, the Carcano does beat it. And the in-block system itself has a lot to recommend it. And this is a little more robust of a system. The bolt system, while not as refined, not quite as smooth and nice, is very durable and very accepting of mud and dirt and grime and grit. So the Carcano was a little more durable. But that said, I still have to say the Enfield was a superior gun because it served a mini Tommy for a long, long time. But, you know, the Carcano served Italy. I don't know what, mini a Mario? Mini a Luigi? I don't know. From the late 19th century, really up into the 1950s when it was finally replaced by the Grand carbine and then the BM59 a short time after that. The Enfield itself was replaced by the L1A1, but really not until the late 50s and early 60s, so it even stayed in service a little longer. Well, if you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear them below. If you liked the video, please click like, and if you have any suggestions how to improve this new series, we'd really sincerely like to hear those too. And if you'd like to help support the channel, please click on the link and check out our Patreon page. This is Misha. Yeah, I need to clean the cosmoline out of this critter. Once you get it going, it's just cocking it there. It really does have a nice trigger. But the bolt throw on these Enfields is great. Yeah, the trigger's not quite as nice. Not bad though. No cosmoline in this one either though. This is Misha, and we'll catch you next time.